While Ultimate has arguably delivered on being the ultimate Smash Bros. Game, there are still features from past entries that didn't make the transfer. Event matches, Smash Run, and those bonus points from the first two games are just some of the things different fans hope to see make a comeback someday. And one notable feature that didn't make the cut was a custom specials mechanic from Smash 4, where every fighter could unlock alternate versions of their special moves and customize their loadout, so to speak. It led to new takes on familiar movesets that were interesting to play around with, if only they'd actually been balanced. But there's still a lot of untapped potential, which is why I want to reimagine the idea of custom specials as if they were coming back. For this video, we're taking a look at 4 specific fighters, 2 who had customs back in Smash 4, and 2 who never got the chance. We'll be creating one alternate version of each of their specials, but that one alt will be much more thought out and less cookie cutter than Smash 4's customs, and pull more from the character's source material wherever possible. So, let's get started. We begin with one of Smash's longest tenured veterans. Link was popular before, but he's hit his highest point in Ultimate, both from his Breath of the Wild themed touch-up and from being legitimately high tier competitively for the first time ever. But the actual changes to Link's moveset were kept minimal to avoid alienating longtime players. And because of it, there's less influence from Breath of the Wild than there could have been, which is a perfect opportunity to take our new style of custom specials and give his current loadout a set of alternates that show off even more of the Hylian champion's arsenal. The Traveler's Bow gives Link a long-range pressure tool that lets him snipe opponents from far away or force them to approach. New to Ultimate is the ability to pick up arrows that struck a stage surface instead of an enemy, letting you either throw it or bring out the bow again to knock 2 arrows at once for increased damage. But there are more complex things you can do with arrows in Breath of the Wild, and a different bow would bring that out. Link would take longer to draw the Lionel bow as it's meant for something bigger and stronger, but this bow has him knock 3 arrows with every use, just like its unique trait in Breath of the Wild. Let go of the B button, and the arrows fly forward in a tight vertical formation for a taller hitbox and greater damage. This alternate take on Link's neutral special hits harder and finds its targets more easily, but the longer startup makes it easier for opponents to react to, though you can use that to your advantage if you know how. Link's Boomerang has been a staple since Zelda 1, and its current version behaves like usual, more or less. It's a premier zoning tool that you can throw at 3 angles and 2 velocities, coming back to you afterward for an extra chance to surprise enemies and confirm it into something. But Breath of the Wild has more than one type of boomerang, so how about we tap into that? The bladed Lizal Boomerang would take a different flight path, circling up and coming right back once it reaches its max distance instead of stopping in midair first. Think closer to Min Min's Ram Ram. Not only that, trample properties on this boomerang would let it cut through opposing projectiles that don't overpower it and keep going. This gives it zone breaking utility that could help Link against other fighters who rely on projectiles. But you can't smash throw this version, so you only get the shorter flight paths, and the throwing animation has more end lag, weakening Link's own zoning in return. Next is the classic spin attack, dealing a single strong hit on the ground or a chain of hits in the air if it touches someone at the cost of its ability to recover very well, though it's actually not half bad at that nowadays. Our alternate version will be a little more creative, having Link take a moment to charge the attack, then leap upward with a rising spin propelled by an updraft of wind. Inspired both by Rivali's Gale and by updrafts as a whole in Breath of the Wild, this version would go 50% higher than the default and give Link greater ability to steer himself left or right. A much better recovery that'd help in some matchups, at the cost of its combat strength. Not only is it slower to come out than the default, Link always takes to the air during it, even if he started on the ground, and it only deals a single hit while in motion instead of carrying opponents along. Better recovery, but worse out of shield. So, it's a trade-off. But there's no trade-off at all to subscribing for more videos like these and turning notifications on so YouTube tells you when a new one is out. What? And we can't forget the remote bomb. No one who's fought a competent Link can. This vastly buffed move gives Link a hard light explosive that he can throw around and detonate whenever he wants. It's a source of pressure, stage control, and risk-free edge guarding all in one. But this rune has a built-in alternate straight from Breath of the Wild that Smash hasn't tapped into. The unusual cube shape gives this version unique properties, like staying put after you throw it instead of rolling around. It'd be the same way in Smash, stopping right where it lands after you throw it and being harder for fighters' attacks to knock around. This gives it different pros and cons compared to the round bomb. You can't just chuck it at an opponent in neutral and rely on it rolling up to them, but it's harder for them to dislodge without having to go out of their way to pick it up, making it better for stage control. And like in Breath of the Wild, the explosion would be exactly as big and strong as the regular version. Let's shift gears a little. We just gave a brand new set of customs to someone, but now we're onto a fighter who never got any originally. Mewtwo's been one of Smash's premier glass cannons in 3 games now, keeping his godlike psychic powers in check and merely toying with his opponents to keep the fight fair. And apparently artificially making himself lighter, hence why his weight is so low. Pokemon characters always have a wide move pool available to pull from, so let's look there for some options Mewtwo can amuse himself with. We begin with Shadow Ball, a chargeable orb of ethereal energy that hits hard when fully formed and can actually combo into a few things when it's less charged, though that's easier said than done in the air with the pushback it creates. It's a pretty conventional move nowadays, so how about something more chaotic for its alternate? Psywave has Mewtwo charge up a cluster of psychic energy and unleash it in the form of a spiraling double shot that goes about 2/3 the distance Shadow Ball would at a comparative level of charge. Like in the games it's from, the exact damage it deals is chosen at random. Not fully, but there's a range it picks from based on the level of charge. For when you want to take things less seriously, Psywave gives you something wild and unpredictable to mess with opponents' heads. It does have some concrete upsides though. Notice how I never said it was a projectile? Because it's actually not. It's just a long disjoint like Hero's Zapple spell, meaning it can't be reflected or absorbed. The basic psychic move Confusion got repurposed in Smash as a command grab that flips people around and disorients them and potentially sets up 50-50 situations afterward. It also flips projectiles back around by reflecting them. But how about a variant that flips the script on this move's role? While it'd start with the same command grab, Mewtwo would then perform the move Psyshock, generating a ring of psychic power that surrounds the victim in midair, then solidifying the energy and converging it right on them. Trading utility for raw damage and power, it'd have enough knockback to kill off the side if used at the ledge, giving Mewtwo another good kill throw. The actual attack part can even damage anyone who wasn't grabbed, letting you still potentially hit with it even if the grab whiffs. But its increased end lag takes away any possible strings afterward, and it's no longer able to reflect projectiles. Teleport is simple, straightforward, and effective for recovering. Being able to just ignore edgeguard attempts when it matters most is always a plus, even if you can't pass through solid surfaces for obvious balance reasons. But as is, the total lack of hitbox can cause problems sometimes. So what if we had an alt that lacked those problems? This version has Mewtwo throw out the move Swift at the start, casting a line of star-shaped projectiles in the direction held before then teleporting behind them to stay protected. Very Mewtwo-like to ignore his series conventions and use 2 moves at once, right? This ensures you won't have to worry about getting your recovery harassed at the worst possible time. But it also has more startup since Mewtwo throws out an additional move at the start. The Swift stars make it easier to tell where he's going, and the teleport itself only goes the same distance as the default version. The most situational part of Mewtwo's arsenal, Disable, requires someone be standing right next to you and facing you. But with a reward as great as an instant stun, it's still worth going for if you know when to use it. It's already a pretty fun move, so let's do something that's fun in a different way. If this version catches an opponent facing you, it activates Guard Swap, a move that has the user and target swap any buffs or debuffs to their defensive stats. Remember how I said that apparently Mewtwo artificially decreases his own weight in Smash? This lets you put it on someone else instead. For a little while after Guard Swap connects, Mewtwo gets significantly heavier, while whoever got caught by it gets significantly lighter. The exact decrease would depend on the victim's default weight, for balance reasons, and it wouldn't stack with repeated use, but even then, creating such a weight disparity would give you the upper hand for the whole time it lasted. What better way to toy with someone than by sticking them with the very thing you've used to keep yourself in check? Oh boy, Wario. Mario's self-appointed arch-rival has a very quirky moveset in Smash that not all of his fans are satisfied with. While it's very in line with his depictions for about 20 years now, and how he always was in Japanese media, there have been Western fans bemoaning the lack of references to games outside of WarioWare, aside from his signature shoulder bash. So, how about we use our new style of customs to pull from some of Wario's other outings? His neutral special is possibly the weirdest command grab in the series so far. Sure, Wario's a big eater, but grabbing people with his mouth to bite down on them and somehow heal a little in the process? Much less being able to eat almost any item off the ground, up to and including... Don't think too hard about that. But is there an option for an alt that's more directly inspired by his source material? Actually, yes! Hypersuction is a technique he had in Wario World that let him pull coins and other pickups toward him for easier collecting. Our Smash version would put a suction effect in front of Wario, not unlike Kirby's Inhale, but with a little more range and a stronger vacuum that lets him pull items in more easily. It'd be useful in matchups against projectile-heavy opponents, but it wouldn't hard counter enemy zoners since he still could only eat one item at a time. And just like how Hypersuction doesn't harm enemies in Wario World, this version cannot grab other fighters, only pulls them closer. Wario's signature bike is emblematic of his style and a key part of his moveset in Smash. Lets him close gaps and run over opponents, or help him recover thanks to its ability to somehow accelerate in midair. Our custom version gives Wario's bike a tune-up inspired by a different vehicle he's used. The Brute Car from Mario Kart DS packs a lot of top speed and weight at the expense of almost everything else, and a retooled bike rocking the car's checkerboard paint job would have its stats changed to match. While it takes somewhat longer to reach its top speed, the Brute bike moves faster once it reaches that speed and hits harder when it gets going, and it's able to take more damage before getting destroyed. It's an option for when you want more power and long distance speed and or don't care about immediate burst movement. The Corkscrew is another oddball move, a rising multi-hit spiral thing that doesn't appear to have any direct inspiration. So how about an alternate that does pull more directly from something Wario's done before? Based loosely on his spring transformation in Wario Land 2 through 4, this version has Wario squish down at the start of the move, then spring upward with a boing. This would give him a much better recovery move, going up nearly twice as far as the regular version. You could even adjust Wario's trajectory left or right during it for more flexibility. But it also becomes less useful as an attack, as it has more startup and only deals a single hit instead of multiple. Animation-wise, Wario still raises his hands up, but he does not spin around rapidly. Instead, his body stretches and squashes a little like a spring in flight, as close as we could get to something new without having to make a completely new set of animations from scratch. And now, Wario's most infamous move, building up natural gas over time and breaking it all at once to deal heavy damage and score early knockouts in the crudest of fashion. Might want to change your diet there, buddy. But he ain't listening because Wario must have got his hands on something very spicy for our alternate. Instead of a single massive blast, this version would make a fiery explosion so intense it sets his rear end ablaze just like another mechanic from Wario Land. While it's not as strong at full charge as the regular waft, the longer it builds up beforehand, the longer the explosion lasts when he cuts it loose. Like a larger but slightly less devastating Giga Flare, it works as a tech chase or situational trap that doesn't need to rely so hard on reads since it lingers like a bad, you know. Last but not least, there's Pileth, the DLC newcomer whose inclusion was fraught with controversy and ended up a surprisingly common pick for people to play as nonetheless. As someone who wasn't around for Smash 4, Pileth never got any custom specials, so our take here will be their first brush with the concept. And for these, we'll be pulling from the long list of combat arts available in Fire Emblem Three Houses, the ones the regular specials didn't already use. Pileth's neutral special uses the bow Fail Not to fire an arrow straight ahead. Taking time to pull the arrow back in order for it to fly far, fast, and hit hard, it seems to be based on the art Heavy Draw. While shooting an arrow is a commitment, especially if you go for the full charge, the ability to bail out early with a jump or shield lets players use the threat of it to force opponents out of the way. But what if you wanted something that comes out faster? Enter fellow bow art Point Blank Volley. This version has Pileth brandish Fail Not more quickly and loose two arrows one after the other in quick succession. With more immediate coverage straight ahead, it's useful for zoning or reacting to an aggressive approach by tacking on a chunk of damage. However, the arrows only travel half as far as the default version, they move a little slower, and you can't charge them to a second level at all. Works best in matchups where you don't need that long-range threat. Pileth's side special is a simple rising swing of the Lance Aridfar in an arc, with the option to lunge forward during it if done with the smash input. Its properties seem inspired by the art Tempest Lance, as it's stronger and easier to hit than the weapon's regular attacks, even if its knockback angle makes it really easy to survive. Our alt version takes this move in a different, more defensive direction. This one is chargeable, with Pileth bracing themselves at the start of the animation and gaining super armor as long as you hold the charge. If Pileth tanks a hit before you let go, the resulting attack hits harder. Just like how the original Knight Kneeler is extra strong against cavalry units, this version is built to counter opponents who charge in at you, making them regret their aggressiveness. But it's also a little slower to come out, and unlike the default, it does put you into freefall afterward if used in the air. Pileth's subspecial uses their signature weapon instead of someone else's, unfurling the sword of the creator to its full length to latch onto anything above and pull them up to it. If it's an enemy, the resulting kick can spike them right out of the sky, punishing airborne opponents just like the anti-flyer art grounder that it's probably inspired by. It's also a surprisingly forgiving tether recovery. But what if you want something with a little extra safety built in? How about an art built completely around safe attacks? Just like how the original Wind Sweep blocks any counterattack attempts, the follow-up kick on this version stuns whoever it hits for a brief moment before the knockback kicks in, giving you more time to maneuver yourself afterward no matter the percent. It also has a larger detection range for latching onto ledges. However, it also never spikes opponents, taking away a major high percent threat. Is it worth a safer recovery? You decide. And finally, Pileth's down special uses the sheer power of the Axe Emir to deliver a devastating blow to anyone in range, which will only happen with a very hard read since it's extremely slow and telegraphed. This is pretty in line with the art Diamond Axe, which adds a ton of extra might to your weapon at the cost of a worse hit rate. But can you imagine if it wasn't so slow? Well, imagine no more. Wild Abandon lops off a full third of the base form startup and sacrifices very little power to do so, making for a move that is harder to react to, but still terrifying if it hits. So what's the downside? Well, the wilder and less refined swing loses active frames, only hitting right as it impacts the ground, or at the very end if you're in the air. It's still powerful yet inaccurate, but in a different way. The less severe startup makes it a little less situational to use in exchange for needing more precision to ensure it connects. And there you have it. My personal take on how the concept of custom specials could be revamped for these four fighters. How does it look? Do you think it does them justice at all? I guess that's for you to decide, huh? I might lack the ability to ever make these happen in-game for real, but hey, designing what-if scenarios like this is still fun, right? What are your thoughts on this batch, and on customs as a whole? Are there any other characters you'd like to see me cover next? Special thanks to these people for helping make this video happen. Thanks as well to my patrons for their continued support. Hope your contributions feel worth it. So, until next time, maybe if I got a custom special that let me combo more videos into each other.